Action!
Getting to be in a spider suit is like probably the coolest experience of my life.
When I found out who the character was, like, I got a bunch of the comics. I'd love to be a part of it.
I walked around thinking, I'm actually Spider-Woman. This is the coolest thing I'll ever do in my entire life.
Well, I've devoured many comics over the last few years in preparation for this, and I think what's exciting about comics is they give you such a visceral visual punch when you read them. So certainly when we look at those, it's like, how can we use that sort of like the cinema within comics and bring that into the universe?
There are aspects of it in the comic books that you can draw on in terms of characteristics, in terms of mental abilities, in terms of some of the lore of where the spider comes from. So part of what we have dug into is not only Madame Web's lore, but the lore of the spider.
The comics are definitely a foundation from which we leap, but this is a very different version of Madame Web to the comics, because when we meet her, she's much older, and this is really her origin story. So we got to go back and imagine how she might have ended up where she is, and hopefully there'll be lots more to uncover.
She's a clairvoyant who has a lot of influence and impact. She's very present in many of the comics. And I think the most interesting thing about the Madame Web movie is it's how we get to the point where she first appears in the comics. So it's an origin story. I always say, if you're going to do a superhero movie, do an origin story.
Madame Web is just such an interesting prospect because she's unlike any other superhero. Most of them have these superpowers that come from strength and ability and agility, and with her it's all psychological, and I found that fascinating and something incredibly exciting to explore.
Two camera, Mark. Two Mark.
She's not flying around and spinning webs, but she is weaving tentacles or webs into the world as an information gathering tool, and that's the sort of visual analog, but it's really like a mind expansion.
The tribe, who have been the keepers of the spider, if you would, have a philosophy about what it means in terms of the venom and what it can do. In her case, and in many cases, they have different clairvoyant abilities. And in her case, being a weaver means that she can weave together the strands of time. So she can see different timelines of the future, and she can see how they interweave or don't interweave depending on how events occur. So it's a very powerful ability to see into the future and potentially affect the future.
When you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
There's a moment where all three girls are in danger at the same time, and in order to save them, Madame Web has to go deep into her mind's eye and send three versions of herself out to save them. And she discovers her power and is able to astral project her body to each girl at the same time and make sure they don't die.
Julia's powers, her webs are different than what normal webs are. Her webs are electric, they're lightning. So they can electrocute whoever she hits with her webs. And then she also can use them as actual spider webs as well, where she can swing from them, she can drop with them. Maddie, she's amazing at fighting. She has great strength. And then on top of that, she has these huge spider legs that kind of can help her with like landing and flying and punching things. They're really cool.
Anya is a very analytical individual, just got an understanding of like science and physics, and she's probably the one girl in the room who could explain like quantum mechanics. Like she's just really smart. Anya's superpower, she creates this like disc, this spider disc that like can propel and like go anywhere she wants it to, but then it'll always come back like a boomerang. And it's got like these like legs on it that are really spiky.
It's a cool thing. I'm a superhero.
It's like bold and brave, but when you're bringing it to like a human being perspective, you know, there's a lot more that goes into that.
There's something about a group of women that I think is so powerful. And when you make them all superheroes, it's pretty undeniable.